The outline to this chapter identifies the modes of non-exporting entry into a country. We'll discuss each of these in turn. Licensing, including franchising, which is always important, joint ventures, as well as the foreign direct investments, including wholly owned subsidiaries. And then we'll go on to the marketing strategies and foreign expansion, finishing up with the different types of strategies used to enter these countries, or a set of countries, and then finally the takeaways from the chapter, which, as I keep saying, they're very important. You should understand that. That is the things that you need to know at the end of this chapter. We have here the graphical depiction of an organization's decision as to what direction they'll be going in non-exporting entry into a country. The licensing strategic alliances or wholly owned subsidiaries or the foreign direct investment. Non-exporting modes of entry basically represent alternatives for the firm when entry barriers to a foreign market are high. These entry barriers involve not only artificial barriers such as tariffs, but also involves lack of knowledge of the foreign market and a need to outsource the marketing to local firms with greater understanding of the market. Starbucks is a company that is licensed all around the world. Licensing refers to offering a firm's know-how or other intangible assets, in this case probably just a Starbucks name, to a foreign company for a fee or some kind of a royalty or other type of payment. Advantages of this new method is the need of local research is reduced. Firms don't have to spend as much time gathering information. They rely on the people buying the license or otherwise getting the franchise. The license may support the product strongly in the market because of the name, because of the system that's being used. The disadvantages is a company can lose control over the core competitive advantage of the firm. They're allowing local firms to take care of their marketing, to get the product out to the public, and to ensure the name, to safeguard the name. The licensee can become a new competitor to the firm. After they've learned systems or picked up on the technology, they can then turn around and use this to create their own firms and then to be big competitors in the marketplace. Franchising is a type of licensing, and here's a few examples of McDonald's, of course, the big one we know. There's also a marketing company called Money Mailers, and of course the Huntington Learning Centers. Just to name a few, there's just thousands of franchises which are licensed. Franchising is a licensing option, and this is where the franchisor offers a local franchisee the use of the business model. They use the name, the model, they get the whole thing. The local franchisee raises the capital to buy it, and of course they're very expensive, obtains real estate and capital investment, hires local employees, and establishes a place of business. In effect, they operate the business. What they get is the systems. The franchisor offers the use of a well-known brand, and you know the value of a brand like McDonald's, and contractual promises to cooperate on advertising and promotions, and assistance in finding and analyzing locations. With McDonald's, they find a location that they investigate thoroughly, they build a building, and they move a franchisee in there. In addition, the franchisees in most cases get training and detailed blueprints for management. So it's a ready-to-go business. Here's a few more well-known franchises. These have, particularly Subway, has grown tremendously in the last 2 decades. The advantage, of course, is that franchises mitigate risk of financial exposure, particularly in foreign countries when you enter in their market. It's a common way of penetrating new markets in foreign countries because you not only have established a location in the country, but also you're using local people generally to operate the business. It's leveraging an existing brand name that oftentimes is well known. I noticed that during these recent riots in the Arab countries that one of the first places that they attacked were a KFC and a Pizza Hut, after, of course, the embassies. So they recognize the American name in a well-known brand. Of course, they're hurting local people, and I don't know that they recognize that so much, but they're really going after the name. Firms provide pre-planning tools to entice local investors, to get them investing in their community and establishing a business in their area. They also give them location advice, how best to choose a site for a business. And in some cases, like McDonald's, that advice goes to actually helping them pick or actually picking the sites. And the big one, of course, is the cooperative advertising of the brand name. When you see Pizza Hut ads, they include all the Pizza Huts. They're done in nationally. Same way with Subway, Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's. Let's look at some of the advantages of just a McDonald's franchise. The number one, the advantage of it is that the product is well known. It's a recognized brand name, and they split 50-50 on advertising cost. So it helps the franchisor in their area. Now, national advertising for the products is not necessarily 50-50. It's just the local things that are done. The franchisor provides various production and marketing support services to the franchisee, such as potatoes in Russia. Local franchisee raises the necessary capital and manages the franchise. Disadvantages is careful and continuous quality control becomes necessary to maintain the integrity of the brand. And we see that in all of the franchises. They have a quality standard that is part of the overall contract that is required of the franchisee to meet certain standards. Now, at one point, the standards were so high in some franchisees that the courts ruled that it was an overburden. I believe it was the Kentucky Fried Chicken franchisees that sued, and the courts agreed that the standards that were set were well above what the company was delivering, and allowed the franchisees to purchase their own product. As time went on, the franchisees stopped doing that, just mainly because Kentucky Fried Chicken lowered their standards, lowered their cost, and were giving them a good product. Because of the licensing is used for original equipment, because it's separate from a franchise type of situation, in that they are producing something that is already designed by the company, and it's in a production mode rather than a resale mode. Now, AT&T agency stores are licensed original equipment sellers. I couldn't find a good example of a original equipment manufacturer, but they're working the same ways, that they do not produce the product, but they sell it for them as an agency store. A company enters a foreign market by selling its unbranded product or component to another company in the country. Examples are Canon provides cartridges for Hewlett-Packard's laser printers, and Samsung sells unbranded television sets, microwaves, and VCRs to resellers such as Sears, Amana, and Emerson in the United States, just to mention a few. Now we're moving to the strategic alliances. The alliance is a cooperation or collaboration which aims to develop a synergy where each partner hopes that the benefits from the alliance will be greater than those from individual efforts. I've listed one of them here that has been in the news a lot, and has been for a long while, over the years as a matter of fact, and that's Coca-Cola is continually creating strategic alliances with other firms around the world. These alliances often involve technology transfers, access to knowledge and expertise, as well as economic specialization. shared expenses, and of course shared risks. Typically, a collaborative arrangement between firms, sometimes competitors, across borders based on sharing of vital information, assets, technology between the partners. They have the effect of weakening the tie between potential ownership advantages and company control, but each company does give up some amount of its control. One of the ways that the companies sometimes set up these strategic alliances is a joint venture that involves the transfer of capital, manpower sometimes, and usually some technology from the foreign partner to an existing local firm. And then we have a separate company that's being developed. Examples include the Rank Company and Xerox, 3M and Sumitomo, several Japanese or Chinese entries where a government-controlled company is the partner, because it seems like China's government owns a lot of those companies. This has been the arrangement in the past. The equity investment allowed both partners to share both risk and rewards. Today, non-equity alliances are common, and they provide for both firms getting advantage in the marketplace. Now, the joint venture is considered the equity strategic alliance because, for instance, Coca-Cola and Nestle's, which have done a lot of joint ventures on teas, water, things of that nature, has been beneficial. Now, this last one was Coca-Cola was black tea and green tea products, and they're producing some of those together under a different brand name. Non-equity alliances include those like with Coca-Cola and their bottlers. Coca-Cola creates alliance with them and sometimes even buys the company. Manufacturing alliances occur between GM and Ford and their suppliers. They have alliances with them because they need those suppliers and they want to know that they're there for them when they need their product. And of course, research and development alliances such as those you see in the pharmaceutical companies when there's a big problem to take care of and no company wants to make that big investment on their own. Obviously, firms are looking for advantages in any kind of an alliance. And of course, most of the time it's economic gain at a lower risk. And sometimes that includes access to technology that they didn't have before. And this market's being reached easier, particularly when you create a strategic alliance in a foreign country. You automatically get into the country. Plus now you're working with firms that have been there for a while and have the expertise of that marketplace. And of course the efficient manufacturing without investment in a plant generally. So this strategic alliances, as firms undertake missions impossible for one individual firm to undertake by itself. So it's just a good deal all the way around. Distribution allowances, or sometimes called piggybacking, are becoming more popular as well because distribution firms, rather than establishing a location in a foreign country, can work with a foreign distributor that takes on their product or works with them, or they create a third firm, some kind of a joint venture. Some examples are given here. Star Alliance and United Airlines, Lufthansa, Air Canada. They have a company called Star Alliance. Chrysler Mitsubishi. I was amazed the first time I popped the hood on a Chrysler and found that it had a Mitsubishi motor in it and was told that it had been there for years. The advantage is improved capacity load. Both firms are able to do much more. There's a much wider product line. We wind up having inexpensive access to markets and, of course, quick access to markets. Assets are generally complementary. That's the reason they put them together. And each partner can concentrate on what they do best. Disadvantage is time arrangements can limit growth of the partners. Sometimes things can't happen fast enough. It can hinder learning more about markets, creating obstacles to further inroads. So it's important that these strategic alliances get together, do it quickly, and look at the markets that they need. Here's some shared manufacturing example. Let's see, Volvo and Renault and Saab, engines made by GM in Europe. Of course, GM has manufacturing plants all around the world. And of course, the advantages, convenience, and money savings, economics. I'd like to point out the disadvantages, though. The organization has to deal with two principals in charge of production. It's harder to communicate and customer feedback. It's also harder to get management to agree on things. And sometimes this puts some real constraints on that future growth. You can see the advantages of an R&D alliance. The economics of it, quickly it can get to a solution. The managerial resources are designed to solve the critical problems. It used to be seen as particularly risky, but since technology is often the key for a firm, agreements now show that the technologies stay with the firm that gets them to the table. The problem of dissipation is less of a concern, mainly because diffusion of technology is so much faster. It's used when you don't have the technology needed to create the next iteration of your product, or one party needs cash to advance their technology. They've got the ideas but not the money behind it. Given there's right agreement, there's little risk involved here. And we see that diffusion of innovation technology is growing so fast that the iPhone, my goodness, I see the ad out now for the iPhone 5, the iPad, and the hybrid cars are coming along. I see more and more brands now advertising their standard gas model as well as their hybrid brand. So these R&D alliances are working very well. Moving to the third section here, we're going to talk about the foreign direct investment, starting with manufacturing subsidiaries. This slide shows us the advantage and disadvantages of manufacturing subsidiaries. If they're undertaken by the international firm for several reasons, to acquire raw materials, maybe to operate at a lower manufacturing cost, to avoid tariff barriers, and to satisfy local content requirements, or sometimes it's employment requirements, so that the firm gets to be part of the economy in the country, but doesn't worry about the importing of products and goods, or at a minimum some of the raw materials possibly. Federal foreign direct investment oftentimes works best as an acquisition. Instead of a greenfield investment, the company can enter by acquiring a local company. A greenfield investment is an investment in a manufacturing office or other physical company or related structure or group of structures in an area where no previous facilities exist. Greenfield investing is usually offered as an alternative to another form of investing, such as mergers, acquisitions, joint ventures, and licensing. Greenfield investing is often mentioned in the context of foreign direct investment, as we have here. A related term is brownfield, where a site previously used for business purposes such as a steel mill, oil refinery, etc., is expanded or upgraded to achieve a superior return, more than they had before. A form of foreign direct investment where a parent company starts a new venture in a foreign country by constructing new operational facilities from the ground up. In addition to building new facilities, most parent companies also create long-term jobs in the foreign country by hiring new employees. This slide provides us with the advantages and disadvantages of the foreign direct investment through acquisition. Developing countries often offer prospective companies tax breaks, subsidies, and other types of incentives to set up greenfield investments. Governments often see that losing corporate tax revenue is a small price to pay if jobs are created and knowledge and technology is gained to boost the country's human capital. This table shows us how firms control their marketing, which is the most important factor in a foreign country, and how they use any one of their modes of entry, the exporting, strategic alliance, and what companies do. Which ones use independent agents or some kind of alliance or own their own subsidiary to handle that. Now, strategy is the very important factor in foreign direct investment or in entering a foreign country. And you see here that depending on how much control a firm feels it needs to have, or in other words, their strategic posture, determines what type of products, market situation they're going to be looking at. For instance, in the incremental, we have indirect exports in emerging markets. In high growth markets, we still have that, but in mature markets, we go with direct exporting. But with services, we're probably going to license them. So the chart gives us a lot of information on how firms look at their strategic posture within a country and what mode of entry they're going to use. Here we have a similar table that shows entrance strategies for specific firms in specific countries. And for instance, in the high growth market for a controlled posture, we see Mitsubishi in US TV market, whereas in an incremental strategy, Japanese fish in the North American market. So we can get some feel for what companies look for as far as what degree of control they feel they have to have within the country for the product that they're dealing with. What is quite obvious in this chart is that countries that have similarities to the host country find that the learning curve is so much quicker because the cultures are similar, or the cultural distance is less, so that the firm can get a quicker foothold. For instance, firm enters a market further away culturally, managers learn more about how to do business internationally. But the cultural distance effect tends to enter countries close to home culturally and geographically. See that as the market similarity changes in distance, the learning increases. That only makes sense. If you were to enter Canada rather than Mexico with a business, then you would speak the language except around Montreal, and even there they speak English, although they like the French. But we'd find tariffs low and the culture very much the same. If you went to Mexico, the culture would probably be a little bit different, and the language, of course, is a difference. But the further away you go to the Asia or Eastern Europe, you find the culture is quite different and be much more time to get involved with that country. Here we have the internationalization stages. We just looked at the indirect exporting and licensing. We're going to look at the other areas as well as we go through the chapters. One term that you may have heard before, and that's born globals. Those are firms that, because of the nature of their product, are an international firm instantaneously. We have to look at any of the computer companies, particularly the software companies, and you see that they sell their products all around the world. I downloaded a newer version of Java recently, and it said pick your country, and it came up with a list of countries, and there must have been 40 countries on there, and it's probably just not even the whole list of what they do. So Those born global countries are those that right from the outset their product is worldwide demand and has worldwide use. The computer and the software we have has put the world closer together in what they do. One of the export expansion strategies is called the waterfall, where the firm gradually moves into overseas foreign markets. Each one of the balls represents a different market, but probably a different time frame as well, so that as we move down from one to the other, we may be looking at years or even decades between the periods of time that firms will expand to another country or add another country to their international portfolio. Advantages of this strategy are that expansion can take place in an orderly manner and is relatively less damaging in terms of resource requirements. Disadvantage of the strategy is that it's too slow in a fast-moving market. Sometimes you have to jump into those markets quickly. The next slide has an alternative to that. This is the sprinkler system, or a strategy for expansion. Firm tries to enter several country markets simultaneously or within a limited period of time. So we may see that they may enter 2 or 3 countries and then at 6 months or a year later enter 2 or 3 more countries. Advantages of strategy are that it is a much quicker way to market penetration across the globe, and it generates first mover advantages. The disadvantage of strategy is the amount of managerial, financial, and other resources required in order to make that big a jump. The remainder of the slides for this chapter are the takeaways. And as I've said before, it's important that you go through the takeaways and study those so that you know them for future use.